All right, so let's get to the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, we talk about the Sixers. Let's face it, even if the Sixers got bumped in the first round, which nobody really sees that happening, but just say if they did. Doc's not getting fired. Embiid's not getting, dealt. Simmons is not getting dealt. So nothing's going to happen.
Nope.
If the Bucks were to lose prematurely, depending upon whom they could lose to, this could be a pretty volatile offseason for the Milwaukee Bucks because we talked about, Bud and how he's on relatively thin ice. He's very reluctant to make changes.
Mm-hmm.
He's very stubborn, for lack of a better word.
Locked in his rotations, everything else, style of play, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, for
and it
sure.
cost them.
Yeah, and it's served them well to an extent. They're playing good basketball now. They've won 7 of 8. But you see, this is why you have to obviously watch games, but dig deeper too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here we are, 2 games to go in the season, and the Bucks are a game behind the Nets for the 2nd seed, so they're trending upwards. And they won last. Hey, listen, 7 of 8. They won again. Great. They beat the Pacers. All right, they beat the Pacers. In the process, they gave up 133 points to the Pacers. Now, you say people forget, well, who's on the Pacers? Well, I can tell you Reggie Miller and Rick Smits are not on the Pacers. I can tell you that. Their starting backcourt last night. T.J. McConnell, who was, from Sixer, we know, scrapper. You got to love him.
I love T.J.
So do I. He's like 15 guys I grew up with. In a lot of ways, he shouldn't even be in the NBA. He's an overachiever.
That's right.
I love him, right? T.J. McConnell, got a lot of respect for him. And Dougie McDermott, who was a star at Creighton and the biggest player of the year. But, an average, a slightly above average NBA player. He's bounced around a little bit, Oklahoma City, the Knicks, etc. Now with the Pacers and maybe 1 or 2 others. The starting backcourt, that was the starting backcourt for the Pacers last night. McConnell and McDermott. And they shot 18 for 34, which is obviously better than 50%. They scored 42 points, all right? And now these are wins, but in some of the recent wins for the Bucks, they've given up 134 to the Wizards, and we know that they're explosive, but still. 133 to the Rockets.
Wow.
125 to the Spurs, and buck 33 last night to the Pacers. So there's 2 ways to frame this. The Bucks are getting ready to outscore people and go on a long, lengthy run, or when they play a good team that can play a little bit of defense, they're going home early.
Yeah, I'm worried about that, BT. I know they've won 45 games, and they'll probably end up winning, because who they play in their last game? They're going to end up winning 46 games this year, and it looks like they're one of those teams that, has a shot. But we've seen this. Like, it's the same scenario we've seen over the last couple of years with this Milwaukee Bucks team. They have a philosophy, which is now, because of Budenholzer, shoot through a lot of three-pointers, right? Play with pace, and try to outscore the opponent. The problem is when you get a scrappy team like Toronto a couple of years ago, that has a star scorer as well, and Kawhi Leonard at that time, they can absorb that, right? And I think more importantly, teams figure out how to frustrate and disrupt Giannis. And once Giannis becomes, I don't want to say average, because he's never going to be average. He's a 2-time MVP. But when he isn't an elite scorer and you're forced to rely on everybody else, you end up losing games that you shouldn't, or series that you shouldn't. And that's the scare. And that's why, Bud is on the hot seat, because we've seen the same story a couple of years in a row with an MVP. What makes, you got to do something different, right? You can't keep trying the same thing.
Well, they did go with Drew Holiday, which is vastly different over Teague, which he is far superior. But point taken. You're going to have to attack this a little bit differently here. Now, part of the problem is when you launch a lot of threes. Now they bang some in. We know that Giannis is streaky, obviously not efficient, but streaky. And last night he was streaky good from the field, from the stripe, from everywhere. Barely missed any shots. Lopez puts him up. Holiday puts him up. Vincenzo puts him up. We've seen Vincenzo at Villanova in the championship game. He could light it up. A couple of years as a pro now, somebody that I liked coming out of college and I think is really growing into a role. But when you put that many threes up, invariably you're going to be off some nights. It's not like they're the Warriors from a couple of years. They're not that good of shooters, right? Yeah. And when that happens, what happens? Long caroms, long rebounds to the guards, boom, back the other way, transition buckets, you give up $120, $130. That's the danger of shooting that many threes.
Yeah, look, they're playing fast. They're second in pace, but 21st BT in opponents' points per game, which is a lot. Up 114. That's on average, and that's not even counting what we've seen recently. Because you were just ripping through that. I still have faith in the Bucks in a sense, simply because of faith.
I got you.
They're not going to exit early. But if they do, then this conversation, Bud's only been there 3 years. It's almost like you have to, because you're sitting with a good squad with Drew and Giannis. It might just be a different philosophy. You have all the players, but if the philosophy's not right, and the offense defensive balance is not right, you have to make a change. Otherwise, you're wasting the opportunity with some really great players on this Bucks team.
I've got a little appearance. He's been on the side for a little bit. Mr. Literal's going to pop on for a moment. So you said you have faith in the Milwaukee Bucks, right?
Faith in that I'm giving them a chance.
Well, then that is not the literal definition of faith.
Faith would be, non-faith would be, the opposite of what I'm saying would be they have no chance to win a championship.
Understood.
And I don't believe that.
No, I got you. But the definition of faith is complete trust or confidence in someone or something. So maybe we need to assign a more specific level of your faith. Because I know you don't have complete faith in them.
I have more faith.
I don't.
I have more faith in the Brooklyn Nets and the 76ers.
There you go.
Let's put it that way.
That makes a little more sense. I got you. All right. So, listen, they are fun to watch. I mean, when you put a $140 up on the board, that is aesthetically, that's fun. I mean, that is a great pace.
They fly up and down the court.
They do. They do.
And that's fun basketball. It's not lazy. We don't really care what's going on basketball. They fly up and down the court and they take open shots. They're smart, but they're not playing good defense. And so this thing is exactly, especially against the Nets.
That matters.
Right? Or whoever it is, like the Nets or probably not necessarily the 76ers. This ultimately will become a matchup thing for them, right? They probably match up well against the 76ers. The Nets, they won't match up well again, simply because of how the Nets score. It's different than how the 76ers
I disagree.
score.
I look at it the other way. If I'm the Bucks, I'd rather play the Nets, because if I'm playing the Nets and I'm Milwaukee, I've got a chance to sniff a $130 every time I play them. I don't think you're doing that against Philly. That's my belief. We'll see. And by the way,
I just don't think Philly can score like that.
But I agree, but I don't think Milwaukee will score with the ease on. I know they won't score with the ease on Philly that they will on the Nets. So the Sixers won't have to score to that level to beat them.
Makes sense.
We'll see. Yeah. Listen, it's a lot like our Yankees historically, where you keep relying on the 3-run bomb. All right, that's great when you're playing the Orioles and you're playing, the Jays, as the Jays are, even though the Jays are pretty good now, but as they're rebuilding.
When you know it's coming, right? You know it's going to happen.
Yeah, and then you play the Rays in the playoffs, and they're catching everything, and they're giving you no additional outs, and their bullpen is airtight. And I say that because the Bucks, while, again, aesthetically pleasing, it's fun, it puts a lot of wins on the board, it wins you MVPs, etc., to win a championship, eventually that needle's going to tilt into the half-court column. And if you're accustomed to getting up and down that court, flying, just like you are hitting a 3-run bomb, that's how you win. When it's, 106, 102, and there's a minute and a half left in the game, and you're not used to playing in a half-court set, it's a little foreign, Tiki, and it's a little tricky. And that's problematic. That I would be very worried about that if I'm the Bucks. I'm telling you.
To use your Yankees analogy. All right, Giancarlo, you got to lay down a bunt to advance the runner.
Exactly.
Not happening.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to be notified when we drop fresh content.